going to get started so we can dive in with our experts. I am excited to introduce them to you. I'm going to go ahead and begin first introducing you to Sabrina Hernandez-Cano. We're so excited to have her. She is a registered dietitian, nutrition counselor, a certified diabetes educator, and she graduated from FIU with a science degree in dietetics and nutrition. And then she completed her training at the Cleveland Clinic Hospital and Palm Springs General Hospital. She is celebrating 30 years, that's amazing, as a nutritionist, and she's an outstanding member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, where she has served as president of the Miami Dietetic Association. And cool to know, she was voted the Greater Miami Dietitian Award. Congratulations, that's a great honor.
Thank you.
I love that. So she currently has a private practice nutrition called Humming Well, where she has seen over 1,000 gastric sleeve patients of all ages. So she can really speak to that tonight. And she's also the lead nutritionist for a startup company called Santo Remedio, which also focuses on education about health and weight loss for the Hispanic community. So wonderful. Welcome, Sabrina. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
And I will introduce our other expert a little bit later. He will be joining us, but I would love to get started, Sabrina, with you. We're talking about the topic of childhood obesity. So knowing kind of your specialty, let's start with the question, what are non-surgical strategies that children and adolescents can use to battle obesity?
I want to say that children mimic their parents and what their surroundings are like. So if us as parents are at least talking about wanting to go to the gym in a positive manner and saying that we do want to eat a variety of balanced food and sort of show them that we have a good relationship with food and not say the things that perhaps some of us grew up listening to, I'm fat, I'm not going to wear that dress, I don't want to go to the party because I don't feel comfortable because I'm overweight, I'm not eating that, I'm on a diet. There are over 17,500 diets registered in the history of what we know.
Say that number again, 17,000.
Yeah, now it's over 17,500 diets registered. The first diet ever being in the 1800s, which was a man who wanted to lose weight. This is the first recorded diet, and he decided to go on an alcohol diet. And of course, he lost weight. Drinking alcohol and probably did not do so well health-wise, but that's the first recorded diet, just a little history there. So we're always going to be exposed to the word diet and restrictive and with a negative connotation. And obesity, now we understand more of it than we did, even 30 years ago when I first started my career. Wow. What we understand is definitely it's multifactorial. It's nobody's fault. I was talking a little bit to Patty before we started about, besides my patients, a very personal story where my very best friend had two children close in age, a girl and a boy, and the girl had no interest in food and she was tiny as can be and always running around. You couldn't sit her down to have a meal. And the boy could not get enough food. He was just, born that way. And I think that if we start understanding, first of all, that it's not our fault, when you have a child that has, obesity, who's overweight, you feel responsible, of course, and you feel like, what am I doing wrong? The vegetables are on the table. I'm trying to make good decisions. And just because you have a drive-through a fast food place does not mean you're a horrible parent and you're causing your child's obesity. I mean, that's just not true. So I think we need to really talk openly about, what are the causes? First of all, genetically, they are there. And when I say multifactorial, I'm not taking the responsibility completely away from the parent. If you expose your child to fast food all the time and you never provide, an opportunity for the child to have a variety of foods, right? Then of course we may be promoting this overweight or obesity. But we do have to understand that people have, from very little, they have different sizes of stomachs. And these sizes of stomachs, the different chemistry that happens, whether you have more insulin, because again, of your genes, you're going to want more food. And you're going to not want to stop where maybe your sister stopped at 3 ounces of food. You want to keep eating and keep eating and keep eating. There are so many factors. It could be anxiety. It could be, there are cases where children have been molested so that they want to hide, with something. And food is such an easy place to hide because you don't want to, you don't want to be seen and you don't want to be heard. And so you eat. And so there are so many reasons why obesity happens. And fortunately, we have tools. And you asked such a great question because we don't use enough of our registered dietitians. We are trained for, handling the different aspects of where the person is at, not just the food in front of you, but the relationship with food, the interaction you're going to have with food. And if we can have children have good education from early on, just like with money, if you know how to handle money from early on, you're not going to go bankrupt as an adult. If you can handle early on, the understanding that food is energy and food has calories, and calories in excess will cause that excess pound of fat to form on your body. There is a science, it's a math, it's a very easy one. And if we teach children this and they start understanding, then they can have sort of like an auto, mindful sort of, acceptance when they understand, listen, I think maybe perhaps I'm at a place where I'm satisfied. And if I'm not, because I do have that big belly and I'm not feeling, completely full, maybe there are other foods with less calories that I can eat. Maybe I can exercise more. So we really need to start talking to children, about this. But I go back to where I started. Children will do whatever it is that you do. So if you come home and lay down on the couch to watch TV, they're gonna do that. If you make the effort to go to the gym, they're going to eventually, and it may not be in, when it may be when you least expect it. And this I say from, complete, just experience. I have a 25-year-old boy, and as a dietitian, I tried not to influence him too much. I didn't want him to, I didn't want to have any strange behaviors because I was raising a child being a dietitian. Right. So I was very gentle in my words and in the things I said. But always remembering, that whatever it is that I did. So I always fixed myself a really nice plate of very colorful vegetables and salad. And perhaps I wouldn't offer any to him to see what would happen. And he's, Mom, I want some of that. Why am I not having that? And when friends, I would take 3 or 4 kids in the backseat of my car, and we're picking them up. It's my turn to pick up after school, and kids were like, "We want McDonald's," and I'd be like, "Okay, but there's a variety. There's a menu in McDonald's. Did you guys know that they also have apples? They have milk. They have orange juice." And the neat thing is that when you offer these kids, and you don't say you can't have the fries, you have to have the apples. So it was funny to see the mix I would end up with in the backseat of my car. But what's funny is that the one that ordered the fries would be like, "Can I have some of your apples?"
Can I have some apples?
Like that.
That's great.
So just being very neutral about, food, and not being the witch, of like, you cannot have this, has always been where, I'm trying very hard, to teach parents that. And my child ended up being, he's 25, but he ended up being somebody who's super into fitness. He eats, where I'm like, oh, wow, where does he get that from? For him, it's very important to eat the salmon, the broccoli. And I mean, he was exposed to a variety of foods. But what I realized is it was just my passion to make sure that there would be a good relationship with food. I was very, 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 passionate about that. I was like, I just want him to be healthy with his mind and what decisions he makes with exercise and food behavior.
That's great. I love just that word, even relationship, that you have a healthy relationship, because I think you could be like the perfect BMI and perfect weight and whatever, but not have a healthy relationship with food. And you also said at the very beginning that registered dietitians, I do feel like you're so underutilized. I think we don't think about a dietitian until maybe we feel that there's a very urgent need, but so important, and you're fulfilling such a great role. And I feel it now more as a mom. I've never been more concerned about my health than I am now as a mom, because the little eyes are watching me. And I think, wow, every bite I'm putting in my mind, I'm like, okay, wait a second. So I'm glad that you spoke to that to just kick it off, because I think, and you also mentioned, like, we need to be vulnerable and candid. And I hope that even this conversation, we can be vulnerable and candid to really ask those questions that'll help us grow.
Yeah, and real. We need to be real, because we're always being exposed to, like, we're going through such a, I mean, remember, I've been a dietitian for 30 years. So I go back, I laugh so much at, when people start talking about organic and, being so extreme with the, vegan and vegetarian and paleo, and they want to do this and they want to do that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it never ends. It never ends. Back in the day, I can talk to you about Atkins, and I can talk to you about, the Beverly Hills diet. I mean, you guys probably weren't even born back then when those things were going on. But these are, it's never going to stop, because the manufacturers want to get into your head so that you buy stuff. So what you're really doing is just exposing yourself to just spending a lot of money, right, on the latest and greatest trends.
Yeah.
So, I always tell my parents when, I'm talking about, let's be real. I mean, if you really want to eat the burger, let's just teach the kid about eating the burger, what nutrients are in a burger. Yeah. And, let's understand that, yes, it may be, if you don't buy the leaner kind, that you're having more saturated fat. But that's why we're having it once in a while. Yeah. I think that there's such a strict code these days, especially with young parents, where I see them trying so hard to make, like, from scratch the food that's organic and that's this and that's that. And I mean, what I have to say about that is make sure you're washing that stuff really well, because sometimes that stuff that hasn't, can be dangerous as well. I mean, about 20 years ago, we had a child fighting for his life because everything that was brought home was organic, and there was a little bug inside the food, and it ended up being where he was he was exposed to something that almost killed him. Wow. It was a big case in Florida. So I mean, all these extremes is where I'm trying to get at, are not good, and they really weigh you down. If you're a parent who and I see parents are like, you don't understand, my friends are buying everything organic for the kids, and I just can't afford it, or I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, like, I can't sustain the pressure.
And they feel so bad about themselves. Yeah. And you have a hard enough, job ahead of you to raise your child and make sure that they come out, sane, and healthy. I mean, to actually have to worry also about the extremes of what you're going to go to feed your child. I think there has to be, first of all, just an attitude of intelligence, like, understand that, food is science. So your kids need carbohydrates, they need fats, and they need proteins. They need enough calories so that they can grow. The most important thing, for children is to have enough calories, and that they're balanced, and that they get a variety. So if you are exposing them to a variety of different vegetables, and it's okay, they might not like broccoli because their tongue is not, we have different sensors in our tongue, and there are studies that show that you are born with the lack of liking broccoli, and it's okay. So now we understand that if you put broccoli in your mouth and you're like, ew, it's because you have a preset genetic situation in your chemistry of your tongue where you are not going to like that food, and it's okay. So change over to the zucchini. There's such a variety of vegetables that if your child says, I'm not going to eat that, I don't want that, psychologically, and I have, such respect for my psychology, comrades and friends, actually, because when they, have a child in front of them, and we work together, one of the most important things is that the child ends up not hurt, right? And having to deal an entire life because they were obligated to eat. The worst thing you can tell a child is what we were told: you have to eat everything on your plate. There are words that are so brutally horrible. That's like telling a child you have to pee and poop on demand. And wait a second, you need to poop some more because you haven't pooped enough for me right now. So these are physiological needs that are, I mean, your basic needs. How can you ask somebody to continue to eat, to stop eating, or to continue to eat if the child doesn't want to? And also, children have very small stomachs, and when they are done, they're done. It's like per age, like a tablespoon. So a tablespoon of protein, if they're a year old, a tablespoon of vegetable, that would be enough. If they're 2 years old, it's 2 tablespoons of each. So the way I was brought up, because I grew up in a Hispanic Latin, family, was that the bowls that I was fed were for a man of 6 feet, 4 inches tall.
Right.
So, and I had to eat it, and I also ate my brother's because I didn't want him to get in trouble. And I had the bigger stomach. And he was the tiny one. He was the lean one. And I was, the one that would have the capacity to get the brunt of the excess food. And of course, that created, where I became an overweight child growing up. And so the worst thing you can do is force somebody to eat when they don't want to eat. So let it go. I mean, if they don't want to eat now, they'll eat when they're hungry. Relax about that. Do not be the militant and make your children eat food. And if they say they don't like it, say, oh my goodness, that's fine. You know what? We'll try a different color of vegetables. We'll try a different fruit. And also when they're going through their like, let's say their twos, they're beautiful twos. I never call them terrible twos because they're actually so cute when they start crying and screaming and throw themselves on the floor. That's so cute. You can say that when your kid's 25 and you're like, oh gosh, but yeah, it's cute. Enjoy it because it goes by really fast. Whatever they do, it's so cute. It really is. Just let it go. I think we have way too strict, ways of thinking that we have to, be with our children and just offer them variety of food. They don't want that. Next, tomorrow we'll try something else. And get them involved also in the kitchen is so important, because then that relationship with food is hands-on. Then you can make a delicious pizza where you're actually cutting broccoli into tiny little pieces and they're sprinkling it on because it's fun. And I mean, it's just a matter of really just having a happy kid with a happy parent. Nothing is worse than having dinner time be a nightmare, whether it's coming from the mother or the father. Do a self-inventory and ask yourself, are these things, showing up because maybe I was brought up this way? Is it my issue with food? Is it that I'm having issues with food? Is it that I wish I was fasting or eating differently or going to the gym, and then I'm not doing it because of whatever reasons, and then I'm putting it out on the child? Yeah. So we have to kind of like also self-reflect and see, where are we with food as parents, so that we don't hurt our children and then end up having to pay the psychologist to clean it up, right?
That's right. Serena, I do want to take a minute. Thank you. This is great. And we're going to dive in more specific questions. Audience, if you have a specific question tonight, please use that Q&A feature. I already see some questions coming in, and I'm going to do my best to get to every single one. But I do see that Dr. Jacobs joined us. So I want to say welcome, Dr. Jacobs.
Hey guys, I'm sorry about having so much trouble with this computer.
No problem. You're here now, and we are so glad. Audience, I want to introduce you to Dr. Jacobs. He is the medical director of the Bariatric Surgery Center at Jackson South. He received his medical degree from Miller School of Medicine and then completed his general surgery residency at University of Miami Jackson Memorial Medical Center. So he is a pioneer in the field of laparoscopy and has been performing laparoscopic bariatric procedures since 1994, and was part of the FDA studies for approval of both of the lap band in the USA. So we have lots of wisdom to share with us tonight. He has not only taught, but mentored hundreds of surgeons around the world, written 2 textbooks, and he specializes in bariatric procedures, including the sleeve gastrectomy, if I'm saying that right, and revisional surgery. and also hernia repair and anti-reflux surgery. And he's performing advanced laparoscopic procedures since 1990. So you're going to have lots of wisdom to share with us. I can't believe you've written 2 textbooks. That's amazing. So welcome. We're glad to have you tonight.
Well, thank you for the invite. I'm not sure it's so
Yeah.
good that I've written 2 textbooks. I don't know if it makes a big difference or not.
That's awesome. Well, we know you have a lot of insight and wisdom to share. So again, audience, if you have a specific question for either of our experts, please drop that in the Q&A. But Dr. Jacobs, I want to bring you into the discussion. Let's talk about, tonight we're talking about children and obesity. So what does it mean for a person, say child or adolescent, to literally be classified as obese?
So, the difference between children and adults, there are many, but when it comes to surgery or bariatric surgery or being obese, it's just that they're little people versus adults, which are big people. Little people can get overweight really, really fast and gain a lot of weight and become obese and morbidly obese. And we use the same criteria really for big people and little people. And that is, we measure their BMI, their body mass index, which is a measure of their height and versus their weight, or their weight versus their height. And if it's above a certain number, we consider them morbidly obese, usually around 35 or 40. When it comes to children or adolescents, mainly because I'm not sure that children really should be operated on. I mean, I think children should be treated with everything but surgery, unless they have a reason to. I'm talking about children less than 12 years old, more or less.
Okay.
Once you get to the age of 12, 13, 14, where they're becoming adolescents and they're still getting into problems because of their weight, it becomes an issue of health, and it becomes a psychological issue, not just weight. And for that, when everything's been worked out and it doesn't give you a success, somebody like Sabrina, some psychological exercise programs, you hold the whole gamut. You try everything before committing someone to surgery, because these are young people, and you don't want to do that for young people. But having said that, if they reach a certain weight and their BMI is about 40, 45, now normal BMI is 25. You're talking about kids who are BMI of 40, 45, 50, 55.
Wow.
And I'm telling you from experience, because I've operated on these children or these adolescents, and they develop multiple medical issues.
That was my next question: is what are like the health consequences of obesity in children? Because it seems like
it's the same. It's the same as in adults. It's exactly the same. That's why I said the difference between adults, little people, and big people is just their age, their chronological age. It's the same. They can get diabetes, they can get high blood pressure, they can get cholesterol, they can get fatty livers, they can get a multitude of medical problems that we see usually in older people as they get older and they've been obese for several years or many years. But the other issue that happens to affect kids is that the psychological problem. Now it affects big people too. But when you have an adolescent, you have a child becoming an adult, and their minds, their psychological makeup is so fragile. In our society, being fat and being overweight, being obese is looked down upon. So these people, when you talk to them, these kids, these wonderful little people, they won't look in the face. They'll look down, they'll look away. They'll have mom, they'll have dad, usually mom, answer the questions you ask them. They don't want to communicate. These young people stay at home, they play video games, and they watch TV eating or play video games and eating, and their life is really not good. They're not developing the way most people develop. And I think one of the biggest reasons to operate on adolescents, I'm not saying children yet, adolescents, is psychological, because most of these people don't really become sick. These kids, they're healthy, they're young enough that they're not going to get the diabetes and all that stuff. It's a psychological issue that really, really affects them. Now, if they do get the diabetes or the high blood pressure or all the medical problems, absolutely, that's a no-brainer. But I don't think you should do this before age 12 unless there's a real good reason to do it. Now, I've operated on children 11 and 12 years old with BMIs of 60s and 62s and 63s. Normal BMI against 25, because really they've reached the end of the line. So what are you going to do for these people? So I think obesity, surgery has a place in bariatric and adolescent surgery, big time. But first, Sabrina and what she brings to the table.
That's right. Dr. Jacobs, thank you. We do want to talk more about, I've got some specific questions just about surgery, but I love what you said about let it be kind of the end of the road, the last option, and do all the, the precautionary things on the front end. So I want to pause this part of our conversation. I want to circle back to Sabrina and talk about some of those things. And we're receiving lots of questions from our audience. So I want to get to those. But Sabrina, we were just talking about having a healthy relationship with food, and you touched on it a little bit. But one of our attendees says, can you give us some examples on how to help our kids have a healthy relationship with food?
Sure. And I just want to say something about what Dr. Jacobs was saying is that once these children, and their parents are seeking surgeries, because the level of pain that they are in psychologically is so deep. And, we've had, the honor, I guess, to really be able to work with these children. And we have been able to see that pain. What I do have to say about gastric sleeve surgery for these children who are, adolescents with BMIs above 40, 50s, or 60s, and I continue to see them happily, is that there is light at the end of the tunnel for these kids. Okay. You have to prepare them well, because it is life-changing, it is body-altering, but the results are life-changing. You go from a kid that is in a dark, deep, painful, setting where he's, ostracized at school. He probably has, if he's, been able to drop out of high school. We've seen high school dropouts, and we see a complete turnaround. We see a child that now has self-confidence, self-esteem, and is able to incorporate themselves, in our society again. So, tools and things that you can do, going back to what I said earlier, is not be hurtful, understand that children, are gentle. They're gentle people. They're a sponge. They're listening. We bring our own behaviors and our own, drama and trauma from what we are experiencing with our weight. Whether you have perfect weight and you struggle because now you're so disciplined that you have to spend hours at the gym and you're watching everything that you eat, and your kids watching that going, oh my gosh, that's pretty intense. Or whether you're just completely on the other side of the spectrum and you just don't care what you eat. You're telling your kid, I don't want you to eat this, but then you're overeating, and you have things that you're saying about your weight. I hate the way I look. I can't wear this skirt. My friend is skinny. I'm fat. So it starts with being gentle with your words. One of the things that I have learned from my audience, my pediatric audience, is that when I ask them, how they feel and what is it that got them to where they are, it's like their first word is my mom, my dad, so my teacher. So it's almost like, wait a second, wow, that's the first thing they say. It's always back to, but my mom, but I'm not allowed. I have to. And it's always, they're so dependent. So I want to say that, first of all, everything starts at the grocery store. If you go to the grocery store and you bring home, foods that you want to eat and your children to eat, that's what they'll eat. Yeah. If you're too restrictive also, that's a big problem. Because if your kid never gets to eat chocolate chip cookies or a cheeseburger, you better know that that is going to be the forbidden fruit that they're going to want. So what ends up happening is, they're a teenager, they have their car, and they're going to now overeat it. They're going to hide it. I've had patients tell me, the day that I was able to get my driver's license, I also went and bought myself food that I wanted, and I shove it underneath the seat of my car, so that when I get home and I put gum in my mouth so that my mom and my dad don't see that I've just eaten this. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? Why won't you just take the bag of Doritos and share it with your sister, your brother? Oh, no, because they'll hit me. They will lock me in my room. I will be in trouble. I'm not allowed to eat Doritos. So you see, there's this level of terrible, terrible treatment with food. And that's why I go back to asking the parent, what is your relationship with food? Because it should be a good one. It should be something that we're balanced. We're in America. Whoever tells you that you're never going to eat a burger or feels bad when they eat a cheeseburger, you're in the closet. You're in the closet. You need to feel good about, if you love a cheeseburger, let your kid eat it too, because more than likely they need it, they eat it, the nutrition is there. We've broken down what a burger is, and they need the nutrients, they need the calories. Where you need to talk to your child is when you see this child that is obsessed with food, you need to get early intervention. You need to bring them to a dietitian. You need to bring them to a psychologist, because there could be other issues. I have discovered in my office children who have told me that they have been molested, but they haven't told anyone. So their obesity comes from the fact that they were in pain for something else.
Yeah.
So it's very important to notice that, obesity or being overweight is that almost like that hiding, you're in hiding, so, and this example that I gave of having my very best friend have 2 children, one of them she ate and she went on with, playing in the park and running around. And yet the boy, the sibling, which Dr. Moises Jacobs operated, and he's doing so well today. He's in his 20s. I saw this child grow up in the same family with a loving mother, doing great groceries, providing plenty of variety of food for both children. But this particular child inherited the gene and his tummy was always bigger. And this is a true story, at a birthday party, and we saw the girl run around, not care, took a bite of the hot dog, keep running. And the boy could not get the 3rd hot dog, was not enough for him. I observed this with my own eyes. And she looked at me and she said, you see the problem that I have? What do I do now? What do I say to him? So, you have to recognize when you do have a child that has this situation, this need for more food, and realize, perhaps there is an issue. And also, even when you have children that are not overweight, if you want to prevent overweight and obesity, you can also educate them. It's like learning finance. A pound of fat is a box of butter. So it's those free 4 bars, right? And that's worth 3,500 calories. So if you want to lose a pound of fat, and you teach this to children and they go, wow. So you mean to tell me that if I have 2 cookies and each one is 200 calories, that's 400 calories. If I have this every day, that's almost 500, right? In 7 days, I will gain a pound if I go over the calories I need. So I love teaching children because they get it. And it's like teaching them how to count money. And once they get it, they can auto help themselves to say, I love cookies. I'm going to look at this bag. I'm going to read the label. And that's my number 2. So number 1, everything you bring home is what you're going to eat, right? So make sure that it's not all processed. Make sure it's not all boxed in. I always take out, even as a grown adult, 30 years as a dietitian, and I still, when I go to the grocery store, I take out at least 2 things out and I put 2 things in that are fresh and wholesome. And sometimes I even argue with my fat girl. I have a fat girl inside of me, which I treat her very well, but she's always there. She was there as a child. She was there as a teenager. I have to still deal with her. And so I tell her, you need to put those things back, and don't worry, just get something that looks healthy and you'll figure it out. And more than likely, when I get home with my tangerines and perhaps maybe my grapes, they're not so bad after all, So that's one thing that's very important. But the second thing is reading labels. We need to learn how to teach your children how to read labels, because the labels can be something that they can get excited about and say, wow, if I've had, X amount of Doritos, I know that perhaps, if I continue, the excess saturated fat, for example, will start collecting in my arteries. I can't begin to tell you how many kids come back to me and tell me, wow, I was eating the saturated fat that I needed for 3 days. Now I'm teaching my dad not to do this so that he doesn't have a heart attack. So kids are the easiest to teach. and they're the easiest to learn the math. And it's such a simple, math and science. And once you liberate them from, from the fact that, it's such an easy math, you can do this if you exercise and you burn, let's say, 250 calories or whatever it is they're able to do, jumping rope, you find things, the steps on the phone. There's so many different apps. There's Food UK, MyFitnessPal. They love the apps. They'll look at them and they'll see, wow, I'm burning X amount of calories. That means that in a week's time, I'm burning X amount, and they will lose weight before even, going into surgery. And some kids have actually been able to curtail having to have surgery because they got it. They're like, I can do this. I can do this. And those are those beautiful stories that you hear and you see online from people who say, I did this on my own. I always tell people, you do it on your own no matter what, because when you go to surgery, it's on your own. The surgeons, they're operating, but it's all on your own. But, once you learn the math and the science of weight loss, it's that aha moment that you can make decisions for yourself. A pound of fat is 3,500 calories. You want to lose a pound of fat, you need to cut back either 500 calories on a daily basis, either from 250 from food, 250 from walking it off. At the end of the week, you will have lost a pound of fat. Kids love that math, and they will do very well with that. So teaching kids that food has value, it's energy. Food is energy, and a calorie is nothing more than energy. It moves, it accumulates. So if you have a 60-calorie cookie, right, and you have a 60-calorie apple, yes, the apple will have fiber, the apple will have nutrients, but we can't say that the cookie, the 60-calorie cookie, either or, the same amount, right? The nutrition is different. The quality of the food is different, but the quantity is the same in terms of whether you gain weight or lose weight. And I think when people understand this, it creates also an aha moment so that you can say, well, today I'll eat a cheeseburger, and tonight perhaps I'll have a salad. So you balance things out a little bit better. You don't eat the cheeseburger and say, well, a heck of it. I ate a cheeseburger today, so tonight I'll just might as well eat the ice cream, and I'll just drink Coke, and I'll just let loose, because then it's like money. It's just like balancing money. So that concept that I teach the children and also the adults, but I love to teach the kids, because the kids will come back and teach me a thing or two. They'll be, priceless with the things they tell you and the way that they're managing, because just like we manage money, and we have in this country the highest rate of people who are bankrupt because they can't manage their money. We have the highest amount of people that are obese because they can't manage food. It's all about management, and there's no good food and there is no bad food. Food is neutral. When people tell me, well, I eat bad, and you see them cringing, and they'll say, like, it takes them like 5 minutes to say the word French fries, because they don't want to spit it out, because they think I'm going to judge them because they eat French fries. French fries are delicious. They're potatoes. And if you put them in the air fryer, you're not going to get all the excess fat. But if you learn to eat them in moderation, and if you learn to eat them without stress, you will probably eat less than if you have an issue. So the idea is making sure that when people come to me, they already have a lot of food issues. So the first thing that I try to do is create a canvas where that they feel comfortable, like they're starting over, because the level of guilt is so much, which is driving the person to overeat even more. Mm-hmm. So I start them in blank, and I tell them there are no good food, there are no bad food. If you had it your way, let's talk about the foods you love. And sometimes people don't even know. They're like, I don't even know why I eat those foods. I think that I'm just thinking that they're bad for me, so I go eat them, so that, and then I realize that they're trying to cover something else up that's happening in their life. And that's why I work so closely with psychologists, because when I find these issues, I'm like, that doesn't sound like it's too much related with food. That sounds like it's related with the fact that maybe you're not doing well in your math class, that's reading food labels, understanding the math and the science of food management is very, very important.
I am jumping back in to say, this is the wildest night parental guidance ever. I apologize. My power completely went out, but some reason I have internet but no lights. So we're going to go with it. I apologize for slipping out. Patty, thanks for stepping in. Sabrina, thank you for keeping us going. I'm watching our clock here, and I want to give Dr. Jacobs some time to speak as well about some of the specifics to the surgical options. And so, Dr. Jacobs, we're going to transition to just some questions right here with you. And you have this expertise to share with us about the surgical option. Again, you said you wouldn't do this on children and looking at, 12 and up, but it may be that someone needs this option. And so we want to talk towards that and want to know from you, when should surgery be considered for obesity in children and adolescents? And is there a minimum, maximum weight requirement? I know you spoke to that BMI, but speak a little more to that for us.
Yeah, I think you have to individualize every decision you make, especially with kids. Obviously, if someone's 30 pounds overweight, you don't want to talk surgery to a kid. I mean, that's where they come in. The problem is that over their whole life, over the 10, 12, 13, 14 years that they've been alive, these kids have been overweight, and then more overweight, and then obese, and then morbidly obese. So when they get to the morbidly obese, which is usually a BMI of 40, but in kids, I like to go even higher. In adults, we use a BMI of 40 or 35. In kids, I like to go to 40 or 45 because I want to give them a chance to grow. I want the adolescents, I want the hormones to kick in. I want every chance before surgery. But once we get to that point where it's time for surgery because they have diabetes, they have high blood pressure, they have psychological issues, like I mentioned before, then really the best way to treat children, in my mind today, is with a gastric sleeve. The gastric sleeve is a surgery where we remove about 75-80% of the stomach. And that means you can't eat or drink much. And it has to be so radical because obesity is such a problematic disease that if we leave 50% of the stomach, they'll just regain the weight back immediately, or they won't lose the weight. So we have to be pretty radical, pretty drastic. So we remove like 75-80% of the stomach. And what happens is they can't eat much, but the best part of this surgery that we do, the part of the stomach that we're removing has the hormones that controls the hunger and the cravings and the anxiety of children. But that has to go with psychological care, psychological treatment. It's not just a surgery, and nutritional, of course. But these kids, it's an operation. They go home the next day. They'll have to be on liquids for a couple of weeks, then soft food for a couple of weeks, and then go back to regular food. And what happens is when you see this positive reinforcement that these kids start getting, when they start losing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds, all of a sudden they're not alone. People talk to them, people look at them, people invite them out. They have boyfriends, they have girlfriends, they have a life, which they didn't have before. And these kids are the best. And this patient, and if I think I'm remembering the patient that Sabrina's talking about, this kid's fantastic today. I mean, he's lost like 150 pounds or something amazing. And he's fantastic. And he's got his life back. So surgery when everything fails, surgery is a really, really good option for these kids. Because they will lead a normal life from a health issue. And to me, even more importantly, because they're so young that the health issues won't affect them for years, but the psychological issue affects them immediately. And their life changes completely. So I think a gastric sleeve is the way to go with these children.
That's great. I'm so glad you shared about that, because I think it's easy on the outside, just people in general, not having all the knowledge that we're even gaining tonight, to look at someone who's maybe had a surgery and go, oh, that's so vain. They just want the easy way out or whatever. But knowing that when you're speaking to the psychological effects of how this has changed their life and how they just get a whole new lease on life with getting this support, it's paradigm shifting for me, just as a mom and as a person, an onlooker to those who have to walk this road. So I appreciate you speaking to that. And
well, if I can say one more thing, as a surgeon,
please.
I love to take care of adults. I mean, they're wonderful and they get their life back. But the most gratifying, satisfying thing for me is the children. And the younger, when they reach a certain limit of what psychological treatment can do or dietitians can do, when they reach a limit, the earlier we operate, the better, because the psychological issue changes and transforms them completely for the rest of their life.
Wow.
To me, it's more important to operate on children than it is to be adults. More pressing, anyways.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say you have a fan club because we have someone, that shared that even is listening in tonight has said he is literally the best, that you did a surgery on this person and some children of theirs. So it's sweet to see just the effect of what you're doing and impacting others. And as well, Sabrina, we know just doing all that front end labor to get us educated and prepared. Dr. Jacobs, a couple more specific questions. Now, you said children are having this surgery, or adolescents are having the surgery, and then they're leaving like same day, next day. How long is the recovery? When do they go back to school? Are there physical restrictions, exercising?
One of my big peeves with kids is they're going to have surgery and they want a week off, or they want 2 weeks off school, or they want a month off, whatever they want. Get out. I don't want to go back to school.
That's right.
I tell mom, I tell dad, and especially that patient, that boy, that girl, I said, you're having surgery on Thursday. You're going to school on Monday. But you told me I can't do heavy lifting. Have someone lift them
You
for
can lift your pencil. You'll be fine.
Take an iPad. Take whatever you need. But you're going back to school 2 days. I mean, there's no reason not to. And they appreciate that because they understand that we're trying to help them, and they're trying to use excuses not to have surgery or whatever the reason is. But the surgery has risks. I mean, I don't want to minimize that. But the risks are very, 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 very small. And, kids are pretty resilient. No matter what happens, they come back no matter what. But the benefits outweigh those risks a million times.
That's great. Just a couple. I'm watching our time here, and we want to close up as close to 9 as possible. We may go a few minutes over today just because of our technical difficulties. Thank you, everyone, for your grace and patience with us. But talk to me quickly about the long-term follow-up. How long are they followed? Are there any long-term issues with having this kind of surgery so young?
No, there are really no long-term issues. They have to take vitamins, and they may need to take vitamins for several years. I won't say life, because life is a long time, but they need to take vitamins for the first few years for sure. Okay. They need psychological, they need nutritional follow-up from day one after the surgery. That's a must. Yeah. And of course, they need to do blood work every 3 or 6 months at the beginning until we know everything's fine for the first year or two. But it's not just surgery; it's a combination of everybody, and it's not just the patient. You got a mom and dad. What Sabrina said about the food that you bring in and what you buy and you don't buy and all that stuff, that's key. Yeah. But that's after the surgery. That's after the surgery.
Okay. Yeah. Two last questions for you on this note. Does bariatric surgery at a young age affect having children in the future? And then can the stomach grow back? Or does it stretch as they get older?
Yeah, let me answer the second one first. Yes, stomach is like a muscle, so it can grow. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to teach them how to eat and how much to eat and what kind of food to eat. That's what Sabrina's job is. She does the best in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
I love it. We're gonna have her again. Let's just have her again. How about that? We need more time.
Yeah, but that's where that kind of nutritional psychological issues come in. But yeah, if you don't watch it, they can stretch the stomach, and so can adults. Yeah. So can adults. And once they get to childbearing age, people who are obese, especially, the problem is that once they lose weight, they can become pregnant very quickly. So it increases the risks of the benefits. It makes them get pregnant much faster.
The benefits of pregnancy. That's right.
Benefits of pregnancy. Yeah.
That's right. I love it.
So so they can't get pregnant. You got to be careful they don't do it, though. You got to wait for a couple of years.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Dr. Jacobs, thank you. And Sabrina, I want to wrap it up. You do have so much wisdom to share, and I want to let our audience know, I think we're going to plan for a part 2 of this because there's just so much. We can't even scratch the surface in 1 hour. So we'll be doing a part 2, and we'll tap into some more nutrition info because it's just so important. And so I want to kind of wrap up our time. Sabrina, again, Dr. Jacobs has said it, just the importance of all that prep work on the front end. And I always say in motherhood, more is caught than taught, like you were saying, like putting things on our plates, our kids are watching. So I just would love it if you kind of leave us with a parting word of how we as parents, just the great responsibility and privilege that we have to make sure that we're creating lifelong healthy habits and relationships with food, and how that can affect our children.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say something about you mentioned, when you said that, easy way out. I hear that all the time. gastric sleeve surgery is not the easy way out for anyone. You have to prepare for it. You have to live for the next, few months, very careful. The follow-up nutrition is incredibly specific. You're on clear liquids for a few days, then you have to transition to full liquids, and then puree foods, and then soft foods. You need to learn not only just different techniques of chewing and swallowing and not drinking your water or your liquids with your foods, but you also have to adjust your brain, your nose, your mouth, your stomach, and your eyes to a brand new amount of food that can go into your stomach. Wow. So when you were able to eat maybe 16 ounces, or a plate full of food, to now you can only eat 2 or 3 ounces, it's very difficult for people to actually make that change. So I would say that gastric sleeve surgery is the very difficult, journey to take, but a very, very good one that has very promising, life-changing, event. But I want to just say the same thing I want to say that I have said before. Your children will do what you do. So if you wake up tomorrow and you decide that you want your children to you want to send them off to school with breakfast, for example, you want to make sure that you wake up early enough to maybe provide options. Not everybody feels like having breakfast in the morning. Not everybody has an appetite to eat in the morning. But if you're gentle, if you provide the options, if your children are watching you perhaps prepare a delicious yogurt smoothie, they might be up to saying that peach yogurt smoothie looks really good. I may have a little bit, and also, if they say no, okay, no worries. It's okay. Maybe later. If you say today, this afternoon, we're going to go to the park, we're going to walk for a little while, we're going to get jump ropes in the house while we're waiting or doing something, we're not sitting on the couch, we're jumping rope, or we have exercise equipment around the house we can just jump to, or we're a family that exercises together. We do fun things that are activities that are movement. I can't stress enough. I want to say that sometimes, how we move is more important than what we eat. I have seen people eat, like athletes, right? But they're exercising it off. They're burning it off. So if you are an active family, your child will have a chance to be able to probably eat the amount that they need. Kids need over 2,000 calories a day, and they're still malnourished because they're not eating nutritious foods. They're eating things that don't have nutrients. So they're eating maybe 4,000 or 5,000 calories of the same thing. I can't stress enough the importance of variety so that they get lots of nutrients in. So even if you're not used to eating it, bring it home. Children love things chopped up into tiny little pieces. So if you chop it up into tiny little pieces and you make something out of it and, call it confetti food or whatever, you're giving your kids multiple colors. Colors means you're giving your kids antioxidants, polyphenols, these things that are going to fight disease, that are going to help them. So lots of color in the diet, exposing them, giving them control in the grocery store, and letting them once in a while, you're like, okay, this is a boxed fun food. Remember, this is kind of like, I call it unicorn food. I'm like, this is kind of like, this is for fun. So let's get real food so that we can actually have muscles. I always tie it back to the body. And I always tell children, how you see things? Close your eyes for a minute. Can you imagine that in order for you to be able to see, you had to have an incredible amount of vitamins from your food? And if you don't get enough vitamins, and they're like, really? Like what vitamins? What can I eat? I'm like, well, let's start with carrots, because beta carotene is so important for your eyes. And if you want to keep the vision, right? And if you want to keep a healthy eyesight, just, like into the age of maybe your grandparents, you're going to want to make sure that you eat lots of orange things. And then we get into the subject of like, orange foods have beta carotene and I need them for vision. Gosh, I better. So when they're in the grocery store, they're going to say, Mom, I need something orange.
Yeah.
And of course they'll make jokes and they'll want to get like, the orange box of cereals, and you'll be like, ah.
That's right. Not the same.
Right.
No, that's great. Yeah, making it fun and involving them. I love it. You said that on the front end, and that's so good. I'm so excited, Sabrina, because we're going to have you again and we're going to dive deeper into this because we've got so many questions we even didn't get to. I would love it if you can give me a tweet, like 30 words about just the difference in trans fat and total fat in food labels. Can you wrap us
Yes,
up
well,
with that
trans
before-
fats are illegal, I'm happy to say. So you will not find one. If you find a label that says trans fats and it has trans fats on it, bring it to me because we're gonna get some good money because
you have a
no
lawsuit.
manufacturer. There's a lawsuit in your hands because trans fats is completely out. So in the world of chemistry, we have two bonds. We have cis, which are straight up, and we have trans. And many years ago, what happened is that they took like soybean oil, for example, and they put it in hot vaults and they burnt it up and they created these bonds from being cis, right? Because the liquid oils were better for you, but they wanted foods to stay longer on the shelf. So by heating them up in these bowls, they created the bonds that are supposed to be straight up to trans. So now we had trans fats. They thought that by making trans fats, that it would be different than saturated fats and therefore would not harm our arteries. But we found with research that it actually does clog your arteries worst off because it's almost like a plastic fat artificially created in vaults by heating soybean oil. And so trans fats became something that is now illegal. Thank God. You cannot find it in food. What you do have in food is natural saturated fat from animal foods and from palm oil and coconut oil. So saturated fat, we need it. We need it for our brains. We need it for hormones, because if you don't get enough, you're not going to have a good, sexual appetite and all that. So we need saturated fat. The thing is that we need to understand that we need 16, maybe 20 grams of saturated fat per day for adults, right?
Okay.
And for children, perhaps a little less. When you go over that, your body doesn't know what to do with it. So the kind of cool thing that our body does is that it thinks you're out in the middle of nowhere and that you're not going to find that you found this lion, you killed it, you're eating all of its fat because you're not going to find food for the next month, right? So your body stores. The problem with storing is that it creates carotid storage. So you get Alzheimer's, you have a heart attack because you stuff your arteries. So there's a lot of controversy about saturated fat. Saturated fat, we've always known, but again, the manufacturers and the media and everybody tries to confuse you. You need saturated fat. As humans, we have to have it. It is actually good for you. A good cheeseburger will give you the saturated fat you probably need for the whole day. The problem is we do not need in excess then let's call it, I individually calculate these numbers for people, but let's call it 15 for women, 20 for men. You start storing. And if you're not burning it, if we were athletes and we were burning it, great, you're burning it. But we don't burn excess saturated fat. And that's the one that starts getting accumulated. So when you look at labels, look at saturated fat, and you want to bring home things that have 2 grams or less of saturated fat. If you really love the product and you really want to bring it home, then, and let's just call it a big chocolate chip cookie, my favorite food in the whole world. So a big chocolate chip cookie, right? I really want it, but I see that it says 5 grams of saturated fat. Well, I may bring that home and cut the cookie in half. So now I have 2.5 saturated fat at that serving, right? And plus the chicken, which is going to give me saturated fat that I'm going to have later. And perhaps later on, I'm going to have something else that has. So I'm not going to really go over because I'm being mindful and educated about the amount of saturated fat that is going into my body. It gives me a little bit of a restraint. Now, if I don't have the knowledge, it's like going to the grocery store. I don't know how much money I have to spend, and none of the products have the amount of how much it costs. So it's the same thing with food value. I don't understand how in this country, in kindergarten, we are not teaching kids 2 things: how to budget. I didn't learn how to budget. Nobody told me nobody taught me. I had to teach myself how to budget money, and I had to teach myself how to budget food and change my behaviors towards money and understand that if I do not make money to buy high-end purses or shoes, I cannot buy them. And if I don't work out and exercise for an hour a day, I have no business eating the whole chocolate chip cookie. So therefore, I will have a restraint. Just like, if I want to save for it, then I can. So the concept of food and money for me is very much the same. It's about, understanding, getting educated, having the knowledge so that you can budget and you can balance really what it's all about.
Great. That's so good. Sabrina, thank you.
My
I do want to
pleasure.
ask Dr. Jacobs, we would love just if you would close us out with maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, just a word to our audience. You have so many years of experience in this field and so much wisdom to share. So how about wrap us up? Oh, you're on mute. Can you unmute and then one more time?
Okay.
There we
Thank
go.
you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity. So surgery is really the most difficult thing people can do. So when anybody tells you what Sabrina was saying, that it's the easy way, that's not true. But once you get to the point that nothing works except you've given up because you don't lose weight, you're getting sick, the children are not getting well, their psychological issues are affecting them, then surgery can change your lives completely. It can change their lives for the rest of their lives if done properly. So surgery has its place in the armamentarium of how to fight obesity in kids. Now I've been talking about 12 years old, 13, because I'm really I want to make sure that those children or those people, surgery is the last thing. When they get a little bit older, when they get to be 17, 18, or they get to be teenagers, now they're becoming adults, and things then change. And I'm much more prone to operate on someone who's 17 with a BMI of 40 or 37, then I would never do that on someone who's 12. But surgery will change their lives no matter what their age when it's really done at the right indicated time. And it's life-changing for the whole family, not just for the kids.
Well, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. And for 30 plus years you have been doing this. So your advice and expertise really comes with a lot of those years behind you. So we appreciate that. We're so thankful for both of you. Some of our audience members have asked, how can I get a recording of this? We are excited to share that all of these are recorded and they will live in the archive. But if you're on the email list, you will get notified when it is live. So you'll be able to go back there into our resources and pull up, previous episodes, all that we have there. So we'll be excited to share that with you. And again, please mark your calendars for our next parental guidance episode, which is happening Thursday, July 20th, our 50th one. And we are going to hope and pray for no technical difficulties. We appreciate your patience tonight. But the topic is more than just a cold. Is it RSV, cold, flu? How do you know? COVID-19 and the flu, as well as respiratory virus, are highly contagious, and most children are more susceptible to these kinds of infections. So join us for our 50th episode to learn the causes and symptoms of common respiratory infections and to get your questions answered, like when should you seek medical attention? So always relevant things here. We're so excited for you to join us for that one. Again, parentalguidance.org is our new home where all of the webinars live. There's downloadable resources there. So check that out. Again, we've got 48 other episodes there. This one will be there soon. So you can sign up there as well for our future recordings. But please make plans to join us Thursday, July 20th. If you would like some more information on what we've talked about tonight, you could screenshot this little slide here, just some ways that you can do a little extra research on your own. But I just want to thank our experts again for joining us. Thank you so much, Sabrina, and thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs. We appreciate you giving your evening to us. And for everyone watching, thank you so much for joining in, and stay tuned because we've got great topics coming all summer. And we hope to see you at a future parental guidance webinar. So thank you so much for joining us.